The throne room stretched wider than any building on Earth. Crystal pillars reached toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into artificial clouds. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds stood in perfect rows, waiting for Emperor Vex Thor to acknowledge their presence. Day stood near the back with Ambassador Narration, trying not to stare at everything around him. He had only been off Earth for 3 months, and the galaxy still amazed him. Creatures with 6 arms chatted with beings made of living crystal. A delegation of gas-based life forms floated in containment spheres, their colors shifting as they communicated. "Stand straight," Narration whispered to him. "Don't draw attention." Day nodded and adjusted his simple gray uniform. At 17, he was the youngest person in the entire diplomatic corps. He wasn't supposed to be here at all. He was just an apprentice, meant to carry documents and learn by watching. But humanity was so new to the galactic community that they didn't have enough trained diplomats yet. Earth had only made first contact 2 years ago. A Calixian mining ship had detected their radio signals and decided to investigate. What they found was a planet full of soft-skinned bipeds who still used chemical rockets and had barely left their own moon. To the great empires of the galaxy, humans were children playing with toys. The Emperor finally rose from his throne. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. 4 eyes scanned the crowd with obvious boredom. "Let us begin the tribute ceremony," his voice boomed across the hall. "Each world will present their offering to the Calixian Empire in exchange for our continued protection and trade access." One by one, the ambassadors came forward. The delegation from Proxima brought containers of rare elements. The Syrian Collective offered advanced computer systems. The Andromedan hives presented biological materials that could cure diseases. When it was humanity's turn, Narration walked forward, carrying a simple metal case. Day followed 2 steps behind. As protocol required. "Ah, the humans," Emperor Vex Thor said, and several members of the court laughed. "Tell me, little ambassador, what does your primitive world offer this year?" Narration opened the case. Inside were samples of Earth's art, music, and literature, translated into galactic standard format. There were also genetic samples of extinct species that human scientists had recently brought back to life. The Emperor barely looked at the contents. "How quaint. Your people play with the building blocks of life like children with blocks. We mastered genetic reconstruction 1,000,000 years ago." More laughter echoed through the hall. Day felt his face grow hot, but Narration remained calm and bowed respectfully. "We offer what we can, Emperor," she said quietly. "Of course you do." Vex Thor leaned back on his throne. "I wonder why we even allow your species to attend these gatherings. You have nothing of value. Your technology is pathetic. Your lifespans are laughably short. Your planet is so insignificant that most galactic maps don't even mark it." Day's hands curled into fists. He knew the Emperor was trying to provoke them, but it still hurt to hear Earth dismissed so easily. The Emperor's eyes suddenly lit up with cruel amusement. "I have an idea. A game, if you will." He waved one hand, and a massive holographic screen appeared above the throne room. It showed a huge enclosed space filled with twisted metal and rock formations. In the center, a creature paced back and forth. Day had never seen anything like it. The beast was the size of an earth elephant, but it moved like a hunting cat. Its body was covered in overlapping scales that looked harder than steel. 6 legs ended in claws that left deep gouges in the metal floor. Its head was mostly mouth, filled with teeth that glowed with a strange blue light. "This," the Emperor announced, "is a Vorth. It comes from Crexus Prime, one of the few death worlds in the galaxy. We captured it 6 months ago for the Imperial Menagerie." The creature suddenly lunged at something off-screen. There was a terrible sound of metal tearing, and then the image showed a robotic keeper smashed into pieces. 17 of my best beastmasters have died trying to control this animal," Vex Thor continued. We've tried neural implants, sedation fields, conditioning protocols. Everything. Nothing works. The creature is pure rage and hunger. He looked directly at the human delegation with a wide smile that showed too many teeth. Here is my offer to your insignificant species. If any human can tame this Vorth within one solar cycle, that's 28 of your Earth days, I will give you the planet Helios Vis. Complete ownership. Cease. It's the richest mining world in 3 sectors. Worth more than your entire home system. The throne room erupted in shocked whispers. Even the Emperor's own advisors looked surprised. Narim's face remained neutral. But Day could see her hands trembling slightly. She knew what this was not a real offer, but another humiliation. The Emperor wanted to watch humans fail at an impossible task. We appreciate your generosity, Emperor, Narim began carefully, but I don't think I'll do it. The words were out of Day's mouth before he could stop them. The entire throne room went silent. Thousands of eyes turned to look at the human boy in the simple, gray uniform. Narim grabbed his arm. But the Emperor was already laughing. It was a deep, booming sound that shook the crystal pillars. Marvelous. The child speaks. Tell me, little human, what is your name? Daehan, sir. His voice sounded small in the vast space. Daehan, the Emperor repeated, as if tasting the words. And you think you can tame a creature that has killed 17 professional beastmasters? You, a boy from a world that barely has space travel? Yes, sir. More laughter filled the hall, louder than before. Some beings were laughing so hard, they had to hold onto their companions for support. The Emperor wiped at his eyes with one massive hand. This is too entertaining to refuse. Very well, Daehan, of Earth. You have 28 days. When you fail, and you will fail, your people will acknowledge their place in the galactic order. You will stop pretending to be equals and accept your role as subjects of the Empire. Narim looked at Day with horror in her eyes. But it was too late. The agreement was witnessed by representatives of every major civilization. There was no taking it back now, however. The Emperor added with a cruel smile. If by some impossible miracle you succeed, Helios 6 is yours. I will even throw in a public apology to your species. He clearly thought he would never have to honor that promise. Day bowed, his heart pounding in his chest. What had he done? He had just bet humanity's future on his ability to tame a monster from a death world. As the throne room dismissed and the various delegations began to leave, Narim pulled Day aside. Her face was a mixture of anger and fear. What were you thinking? She hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? Day took a deep breath. I know it sounds crazy, but I can do this. How? You're 17 years old. You've never even seen an alien creature before 3 months ago. My grandmother, Day said quietly. She taught me things. About animals. About predators. I know. I can do this. Narim stared at him for a long moment, then sighed. I hope you're right, Day. Because if you're wrong, you just made humanity a subject race of the Calixian Empire. The Imperial Menagerie was located deep beneath the palace, accessible only through a series of security checkpoints. Day walked through the corridors with Narim and Ji-Hei, the medical officer who had insisted on coming along. This is insane, Ji-Hei muttered for the 10th time. Absolutely insane. You already said that. Day replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt, because it bears repeating. You're going to get yourself killed, and probably doom our entire species in the process. Narim held up a hand for silence as they approached the final checkpoint. 2 Calixian guards stood at attention, their plasma rifles humming with barely contained energy. The human has permission from Emperor Vex Thor, Narim announced. One guard checked his datapad, then nodded. The boy can enter. The others must wait outside the primary containment zone. Ji-Hei started to protest, but Day shook his head. It's okay. I need to do this alone anyway. The massive doors slid open with a hiss of pressurized air. The smell hit Day first, a mixture of animal musk, ozone, and something else he couldn't identify. Fear, maybe. Or death. A Calixian in a keeper's uniform approached them. He was shorter than most of his species, with scars covering his arms and face. What surprised Day was that he looked almost human around the eyes. "You must be the foolish one," the keeper said in perfect Korean. Day blinked in surprise. "You speak my language?" "I was born on Earth," the keeper said quietly. "Sol, actually. I was 8 when the Calixians came to my village. They took me and 40 other children for their labor programs. That was 30 years ago." He gestured to himself. "I'm Taeyong. I've been working in this menagerie for 15 years. I'm sorry," Day said, not knowing what else to say. Taeyong shrugged. "Don't be sorry. Be smart. Turn around and leave while you still can." "I can't do that." "Then you're going to die." Taeyong started walking deeper into the facility. "Come. I'll show you what you're dealing with." They passed dozens of enclosures, each containing creatures from different worlds. Some were beautiful, with feathers that shimmered like rainbows. Others were terrifying, all teeth and claws and hostile eyes. But none of them compared to what waited at the end of the hall. The Vorth's enclosure was the size of a football stadium. The walls were made of reinforced durasteel, the strongest material in the galaxy. Scorch marks and deep gouges covered every surface. The floor was littered with the remains of broken equipment and shattered barriers, and in the center of all that destruction, the Vorth paced. Day's first instinct was to run. Every cell in his body screamed danger. The creature was even more terrifying in person than on the holographic display. Each step it took shook the ground. Its scales caught the light and reflected it in sharp, painful flashes. The blue glow of its teeth seemed to pulse with hunger. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Taeyong said softly. "In a terrible way." "Taeyong, how many people has it killed?" 17 beast masters, like the Emperor said, but also 32 maintenance workers, 12 guards, and 6 scientists who thought they could study it from safe distances. Taeyong pointed to a dark stain on the far wall. "That's all that's left of the last one." Day swallowed hard. "What have you tried?" "To control it. I mean, everything. Neural implants that the creature somehow destroyed from the inside. Sedation fields that it developed immunity to within hours. Pain conditioning that only made it more aggressive. Starvation, which nearly worked until it started eating the walls. We even tried befriending it with smaller creatures from its home world. It killed them instantly. What does it eat normally?" Taeyong looked at him with something like respect. "That's the first intelligent question anyone's asked. On Crexus Prime, Vorths hunt in the deep canyons. They eat anything they can catch other predators, mostly. The planet is so hostile that there are no herbivores. Everything there is trying to kill everything else." Day watched the creature move. Despite its size, it was incredibly graceful. Each step was placed with precision. Its head constantly swiveled, tracking movements he couldn't even see. "What's the light cycle in here?" Day asked. "Standard galactic 16 hours light, 8 hours dark." "Why? What's it like on Crexus Prime?" Taeyong consulted his datapad. "Let me check. 31-hour days, with 19 hours of daylight, and 12 of darkness. And how often do you feed it?" "Whenever it seems hungry. Usually twice per galactic day." Day nodded slowly, an idea forming in his mind. "Like what?" "The light cycle needs to match its home world. And I need a regular feeding schedule, same time, every day." "Can you do that?" "I can. But it won't make a difference. We've tried environmental adjustments before." "1. Not like this." Day pointed to the Vorth. "Look at how it moves. It's not just angry. It's confused. Stressed. Everything in its environment is wrong. The lights, the food, the space itself. It's like..." He struggled for the right words. It's like taking a person from a quiet village and dropping them in the middle of a city with no explanation. They'd lash out too. Tae-young studied him for a moment. You really think you understand this creature? No, Dae admitted. But I'm going to try to learn. You'll die trying. Maybe. But I have to try anyway. Tae-young sighed. What else do you need? Raw meat, the kind it would hunt on its home world, if possible. Time alone to observe it. And... Dae hesitated. This is going to sound strange, but I need a ball. A ball? A simple ball. About this big. Dae held his hands apart to show the size. Durable enough that the Vorth can't destroy it easily. You're planning to play with a Death World predator? Something like that. Tae-young shook his head in disbelief but made notes on his datapad. I'll get you what you need. But I'm also going to have a medical team on standby. And emergency stasis fields. And probably a priest, because you're going to need one. Fair enough. For the next hour, Dae did nothing but watch. He sat outside the enclosure, far enough away that the Vorth didn't perceive him as an immediate threat, and simply observed. The creature's movements weren't random. It had a pattern. Every 17 minutes, it would complete a circuit of the enclosure, checking the same weak points in the same order. Every time it passed the feeding station, its head would turn slightly, even if there was no food there. It was looking for something. Predictability. Structure. The things that would exist in its natural environment. On Crexus Prime, the sun would rise and set at regular intervals. Prey would move in patterns based on the terrain and the time of day. There would be rules, even in a death world. Especially in a death world. But here, in this artificial enclosure, nothing made sense. The Vorth was trapped in chaos. Dae pulled out his personal datapad and started making notes. Light cycle adjustment. Feeding schedule. Territorial markers. Each observation added to his understanding. Ji-hye appeared at the observation window. Her face creased with worry. How's it going? Good, actually. You haven't even entered the enclosure yet. I'm not going to. Not for a while. But you only have 28 days. I know. Dae smiled slightly. Your grandmother never dealt with alien death monsters. No, Dae agreed. But she rehabilitated 3 tigers, 2 polar bears, and a wolf pack that everyone else wanted to put down. She taught me that every predator, no matter how dangerous, follows certain rules. I just need to figure out what rules the Vorth follows. Ji-hye looked at the creature prowling in its enclosure. I hope you're right. For all our sakes. As the first day came to an end, Tae-young implemented the changes Dae had requested. The light cycle shifted to match Crexus Prime. The feeding happened at a set time, marked by a specific sound. The Vorth noticed immediately. Its pacing slowed slightly. Its head tilted, as if trying to understand why things were suddenly different. It was a tiny change, almost imperceptible, but it was a start. 5 days passed. Dae spent every waking hour at the observation window, watching the Vorth. He ate his meals there. He slept in a chair nearby. He filled 3 datapads with notes about the creature's behavior. The changes were subtle at first. The Vorth still paced, still tested the barriers, still showed aggression toward anything that moved in its enclosure. But the patterns were shifting. With the proper light cycle, the creature's movements became more organized. It seemed to have designated different areas of the enclosure for different purposes. One corner for sleeping, another for watching, a third for what Dae thought might be territorial marking. The regular feeding schedule made the biggest difference. The Vorth no longer attacked the feeding station with desperate hunger. It learned to expect food at specific times. The frantic energy that had characterized its earlier behavior started to fade. The court thinks you're insane, Narim said, appearing beside Dae on the morning of the 6th day. The Emperor has been showing footage of you, just sitting here. He's turned it into entertainment. Let them laugh, Dae replied, not taking his eyes off the Vorth. What have you learned? That everyone's been approaching this wrong. They see the Vorth as a problem to solve with force or technology. But it's not a problem. It's a living being that's been traumatized. Narim pulled up a chair. Explain. Think about it. The Vorth was captured from its home world. Everything. It knew the sky, the ground, the air, the sounds, the smells, all gone. Replaced with artificial everything. Then beings it doesn't understand started trying to control it with pain, drugs, and machines. It killed 17 people day. Of course it did. It was defending itself. From its perspective, it's been under constant attack since the moment it was captured. Day gestured to the creature. Look at it now. Really look. It's not attacking anything. It's just existing. Narim watched the Vorth for several minutes. It does seem calmer. Because I'm not threatening it. I'm not trying to force it to do anything. I'm just present. The Emperor won't accept calm as tamed. He'll want a demonstration. I know. But we're not ready for that yet. There's still trust to build. On the 7th day, something remarkable happened. Day was sitting in his usual spot when the Vorth stopped its pacing directly in front of the observation window. For the first time, it looked straight at him. Their eyes met. Day didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't show fear. The Vorth tilted its massive head, studying him. Then, after what felt like an eternity, it turned away and resumed its patrol. Taeyong, who had been watching from the control station, came running. Did you see that? It acknowledged me, Day said, his voice shaking slightly. It knows I'm here. Really knows. In 15 years, I've never seen it make eye contact with anyone without attacking. What does this mean? I Mang. 1. It means we're making progress. On day 9, Day asked Taeyong to lower the barrier on the observation window, not completely, just enough to create a small opening, just enough that his scent could reach the Vorth. Absolutely not, Taeyong said. The moment it smells you, it'll try to kill you. It already knows I'm here. Smell will just give it more information. Information that you're prey. Trust me. Taeyong stared at him for a long moment, then sighed. You're as stubborn as your grandmother must have been. Fine. But I'm keeping the emergency stasis fields ready. The barrier lowered by 30 centimeters. Air from the enclosure rushed out, carrying the Vorth's scent. It was harsh and sharp, like metal and ozone, mixed with something organic. The Vorth's head snapped toward the window. Its nostrils flared. Day remained perfectly still. The creature approached slowly, each step deliberate. It sniffed the air. Once, twice, 3 times. Then it made a sound Day had never heard before, not a roar or a growl, but something almost like a question. Hello, Day said softly. I'm not going to hurt you. The Vorth cocked its head again. It took a step back, then returned to its usual patrol route. It didn't attack, Taeyong whispered. It smelled a human, and it didn't attack. Because I'm not a threat, I'm just part of its environment now. Something familiar. By day 12, Dai was ready for the next step. He had Taeyong prepare the ball. He'd requested a sphere made of compressed duraplast, tough enough to withstand the Vorth's bite but light enough to roll easily. This is your grand plan? Narim asked when she saw it. A toy? Watch, Day said. He had Taeyong open a small port in the enclosure wall, one used for delivering food but never for objects like this. Day took the ball and, without entering the enclosure himself, rolled it through the opening. The ball bounced across the floor and came to rest about 10 meters from the Vorth. The creature froze. Its entire body went still. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the Vorth approached the ball. It sniffed it, touched it gently with one claw. The ball rolled a few centimeters. The Vorth jumped back, startled. Then, cautiously, it touched the ball again. This time, it rolled farther. Something incredible happened. The Vorth's body language changed completely. Its aggressive posture softened. It batted at the ball again, watching it roll with what could only be described as fascination. Then it chased the ball. A creature that had killed 45 beings was playing. I don't believe it, Taeyong breathed. Haewon, a young Calixian scientist who had been monitoring the Vorth's biological signs, came running into the observation room. Look at these readings. Its cortisol levels just dropped by 40%. Its heart rate is normalizing. This is impossible. Why is it impossible? Day asked. Because Vorths are pure predators. They don't play. They don't experience joy. They hunt and kill and survive. That's all they do. That's all you thought they did, Day corrected. Because you only ever saw them under stress. But every intelligent creature plays. It's how they learn, how they develop skills. My grandmother taught me that. For the next hour, the Vorth batted the ball around its enclosure. Sometimes it would pounce on it. Sometimes it would use its tail to knock it across the space. It even made sounds that might have been contentment. When the ball finally rolled into a corner and stopped, the Vorth picked it up carefully in its mouth and carried it to its sleeping area. It curled around the ball protectively. It has a toy now, Jihei said, sounding amazed. A Death World apex predator has a favorite toy. On day 15, Day did something that made everyone in the menagerie think he'd lost his mind. He asked Taeyong to open the main enclosure door. No, Taeyong said flatly. I need to go inside. Then you need to write a will first. The Vorth trusts me now. I can feel it. Narim grabbed Day's arm. Trusting from a distance and entering its territory are completely different things. You'll trigger every predatory instinct it has. I don't think so. Watch. Before anyone could stop him, Day walked to the enclosure controls and entered the override code Taeyong had foolishly left visible on his datapad. The door began to open. Stop him! Jihei shouted, but it was too late. Day stepped into the enclosure. The Vorth, which had been resting in the far corner with its ball, immediately rose to its feet. Every muscle in its body tensed. Day stood just inside the door, making himself as small and non-threatening as possible. He didn't make eye contact, didn't move toward the creature, just stood there, breathing slowly. The Vorth took one step forward, then another. It was moving toward him with predatory focus. Through the observation window, Day could hear Jihei screaming for security. Taeyong was frantically activating the emergency protocols, but Day stayed calm. He had spent 15 days learning this creature's language, its postures, its sounds, its patterns. He knew what came next. The Vorth stopped 3 meters away. It lowered its head and made that questioning sound again. Day slowly sat down on the floor, making himself even less threatening. The Vorth circled him once, twice. Its nose almost touched his shoulder. Then it sat down too. Day extended one hand, palm down, moving slower than he'd ever moved in his life. The Vorth watched his hand approach. When it was close enough, the creature leaned forward and touched its nose to Day's fingers. The scales were surprisingly warm. Hello, friend, Day whispered. See? I told you I wouldn't hurt you. The Vorth made a deep rumbling sound that vibrated through the floor. It wasn't aggressive. It was almost like a cat purring. Outside the enclosure, the entire staff stood in shocked silence. Day had just touched a Vorth and lived. The news spread through the palace like wildfire. By the next morning, every major media outlet in the galaxy was running the story. A human boy had touched a Vorth and survived. Some channels showed the footage on repeat. Others brought in experts who insisted it must be fake. Emperor Vex's Thor watched the broadcasts with growing concern. His advisor, Bin Su, stood beside the throne, his face carefully neutral. The human is making progress, Bin Su said carefully. I can see that. The Emperor's 4 eyes narrowed. How many days remain? 13, my lord. Vex Thor drummed his fingers on the armrest of his throne. When he had made the challenge, it was meant to be impossible. A joke. A way to put the upstart humans in their place. Now it looked like the joke might be on him. Define the parameters of tamed, more specifically, the Emperor commanded. My lord, the boy has made the creature docile. Fine. But docile is not the same as tamed. A tamed beast obeys commands. It performs tasks. It demonstrates complete submission to its master. Bin Su smiled. Of course, my lord. Shall I inform the humans of the new requirements? Yes. And make sure the entire galaxy knows. I want there to be no confusion about what constitutes success. Back at the menagerie, Day spent day 16 inside the enclosure with the Vorth. They had developed a routine. Day would enter slowly, sit in the same spot, and wait for the creature to approach. The Vorth would circle him once or twice, then settle down nearby. Sometimes they would play with the ball. Day would roll it, and the Vorth would chase it, then bring it back to him. Other times they would simply sit in comfortable silence. The massive predator and the human boy. Tae-yong had stopped questioning Day's methods. Now he just watched in amazement and took detailed notes. You know this changes everything we thought we knew about Vorths, right? About death? World species in general? Maybe you just needed to ask them nicely, Day said with a small smile. It's more than that. You're proving that intelligence and emotion exist even in the most hostile environments. The Vorth isn't just a killing machine. It's a thinking, feeling, being. All creatures are, if you give them a chance to show it. That afternoon, Na-Rim arrived with news. Her face was grim. The Emperor has changed the terms. Day looked up from where he sat beside the Vorth. What do you mean? He's saying that making the Vorth docile isn't enough. You need to prove you've truly tamed it. He wants a demonstration of complete obedience. What kind of demonstration? Na-Rim handed him a datapad. On it was an official declaration from the Emperor. Dai read it and felt his stomach sink. The challenge would take place in the Grand Arena. Day and the Vorth would face 3 of the Emperor's elite guards in combat. The Vorth would need to follow Day's commands perfectly, demonstrating that it had been completely tamed. This is different from the original agreement, Day said quietly. I know. But the Emperor is claiming he always meant tamed to include combat obedience. His lawyers have already filed the paperwork. It's legal under Calixian law. Contingenious. Calixian law. Of course it is. Day looked at the Vorth, which was watching him with those intelligent eyes. He's moving the goalposts, because I'm actually going to win. Can you do it? Can you get the Vorth to fight on command? I don't know. We've built trust, but I've never asked it to attack anything. I've never given it commands at all. Everything we've done has been based on mutual respect and understanding. Ji-Hei, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. So, teach it. You have 13 days. It's not that simple. If I start trying to control it, I might break the trust we've built. But if you don't, humanity loses everything. Day closed his eyes. She was right. He had gambled humanity's future on this challenge, and now he had to see it through. Even if it meant risking his friendship with the Vorth, he spent that night thinking about his grandmother. She had been a remarkable woman, famous in South Korea for her work with dangerous animals. She had taught Day everything she knew before she died. One lesson came back to him clearly. Training and partnership are not the same thing, she had said. Training is about control. Partnership is about cooperation. The best handlers know how to achieve both, without sacrificing either. The next morning, Day began a new phase of his work with the Vorth. Instead of just sitting together, he started introducing simple activities. He would walk in a direction and encourage the Vorth to follow. When it did, he would reward it with praise and a piece of meat. He created simple patterns of movement and sound, teaching the creature to associate certain gestures with certain actions. The Vorth was incredibly intelligent. It learned faster than any animal Day had worked with on Earth. Within 2 days, it understood basic, directional commands. By day 20, it would sit, stay, come, and move to specific locations on Day's signal. But Day refused to teach it to attack. He wouldn't turn their relationship into something violent. "You're running out of time," Taeyong warned on day 22. "The arena combat is in 6 days. I know. The Emperor's guards won't go easy on you. They'll try to kill the Vorth. And probably you too. I know that too. Then what's your plan?" Day looked at his friend because that's what the Vorth had become. On day 25, 3 days before the arena combat, something unexpected happened. HFY, the Calixian scientist who had been studying the Vorth's biological data, requested a meeting with Day. They met in a small conference room. HFY spread several data charts across the table. "I've been analyzing the Vorth's brain scans," she said. "What you've done is extraordinary. The creature's neural pathways have completely reorganized over the past 3 weeks. New connections have formed in areas associated with social bonding and complex communication. What does that mean? It means the Vorth has literally changed its brain structure to accommodate its relationship with you. This isn't just training. You've formed an actual bond with a creature that supposedly can't bond with anything." Day studied the charts, seeing the complex patterns of neural activity. "My grandmother always said that every creature wants connection. We're social beings at our core. Even the ones that seem solitary. Your grandmother was wise. But there's something else." HFY pulled up another chart. "I've also been monitoring the guards who will face you in the arena. They're being enhanced with combat drugs and advanced weaponry. The Emperor wants to make sure you fail." "Why are you telling me this?" HFY looked at him steadily. "Because what you're doing matters. You're proving that understanding is more powerful than force. That compassion works better than cruelty. The Empire is built on the opposite philosophy. If you succeed, you'll challenge everything the Calixians believe about power and control. I'm just trying to help a scared animal. You're doing much more than that. You're showing the galaxy a different way to exist." The day before the arena combat, Day spent the entire day with the Vorth. He didn't practice commands or run drills, he just sat with his friend and talked to it. "Tomorrow is going to be scary," he said, scratching the scales under the Vorth's chin, a spot he'd learned it particularly enjoyed. "There will be loud noises and bright lights and people trying to hurt us. But I need you to trust me. Okay? I won't let anything bad happen to you." The Vorth rumbled its purring sound and leaned into his touch. "We're partners now, you and me. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. When? We're lime. We're lime. We're lime." That night, Day couldn't sleep. He lay in his quarters, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he'd made a terrible mistake. What if the Vorth got hurt? What if he got hurt? What if they failed, and humanity became subjects of the Empire? But when morning came, he pushed all those fears aside. He had a job to do. Narim and Jihei met him outside the menagerie. Both women looked worried. "The arena is ready," Narim said. "Every major civilization in the galaxy is sending representatives to watch. This is being broadcast to billions of beings. No pressure then." Day joked weakly. Jihei handed him a small device. "This is a medical beacon. If things go bad, activate it, and I'll get to you as fast as I can. Thanks." Taeyong appeared, leading the Vorth on a specialized transport platform. The creature looked calm, but Day could see the tension in its muscles. It knew something was different today. Day walked up to his friend and placed a hand on its massive head. "Hey, it's okay. I'm right here." The Vorth touched its nose to his chest. The gesture they developed as a greeting. "Let's go show them what real partnership looks like," Day said. Together, the human boy and the Death World predator headed toward the Grand Arena, where the Emperor's challenge would finally be decided. The Grand Arena was even more massive than Day had imagined. It could hold 500,000 spectators, and every seat was filled. Beings from every corner of the galaxy had come to witness this moment. The air buzzed with anticipation. Day stood at the entrance tunnel with the Vorth beside him. He could hear the roar of the crowd above, feel the vibration of their excitement through the floor. The Vorth pressed closer to him, nervous in this strange environment. "I know, friend," Day said softly, running his hand along the creature's scales. "But we've got this. Together." A Calixian official appeared. "It's time. The Emperor is ready to begin." Day took a deep breath and started walking. The Vorth followed without hesitation. Staying close to his side, the tunnel opened onto the arena floor, and suddenly they were standing in front of 500,000 watching eyes. Holographic cameras floated everywhere, broadcasting every angle to the billions watching across the galaxy. Emperor Vex Thor sat in the royal box, looking down at them with a smile that was all teeth and cruelty. Bin Su stood beside him, already looking smug. "People of the galaxy." The Emperor's voice boomed through the arena's sound system. 28 days ago, this human boy claimed he could tame the untamable. Today, we discover if his boast was truth or foolish pride. The crowd roared its approval. "The rules are simple," Vex Thor continued. "The human and his pet will face 3 of my elite guards in combat. If the creature obeys the boy's commands and defeats the guards without killing them because we are civilized, after all, then he has proven his mastery. Helios 6 will belong to humanity." The Emperor paused dramatically. "But if he fails, if the beast attacks him, or if he cannot control it, then humanity acknowledges its place as subjects of the Calixian Empire. Are the terms understood?" Day's voice was small in the massive arena, but the microphones caught it. "Yes, Emperor." "Then let the trial begin." 3 massive doors opened on the opposite side of the arena. Out walked the Emperor's guards, and Day's heart sank. They were enormous, each over 2.5 meters tall, encased in advanced combat armor. They carried weapons that hummed with energy, plasma rifles, shock batons, and neural disruptors. Worst of all, Day could see the slight shimmer around their bodies that meant they were enhanced with combat drugs. This wasn't a fair test. It was an execution, dressed up as entertainment. The Vorth growled low in its throat, sensing the threat. "Easy," Day whispered. The guards began to advance, spreading out to attack from multiple angles. It was a professional military formation, designed to overwhelm opponents quickly. Day raised his hand in the gesture he'd taught the Vorth for, "Stay close." The creature immediately moved to his left side, positioning itself as a shield between him and 2 of the guards. The crowd murmured in surprise. The beast had followed a command. The first guard fired a warning shot from his plasma rifle. The bolt of energy struck the ground near Day's feet, sending up a spray of scorched dirt. It was meant to startle them, to break their formation. But Day didn't flinch, and neither did the Vorth. "Now they're trying to scare us," Day said calmly to his friend. "Remember what we practiced. Defense first." He gave a subtle hand signal. The Vorth moved smoothly to the right, putting itself between Day and the 3rd guard, who had been trying to flank them. The 2nd guard charged forward with his shock baton raised. It was a weapon designed to incapacitate even large creatures with a single touch. Day whistled a specific pattern they'd practiced. The Vorth responded instantly, using its powerful tail to sweep the guard's legs out from under him. The warrior crashed to the ground, his weapon flying from his hand. The crowd gasped. The Vorth could have killed him easily, could have used its teeth or claws, but it had simply disarmed him, exactly as Day had asked. "That's it," Day encouraged. "Just like we practiced." The other 2 guards began firing their weapons in earnest now. Energy bolts sizzled through the air. The Vorth moved with incredible speed, positioning itself to block the shots with its armored scales while keeping Day safe behind it. Day could see the pattern in their attack. They were working together, trying to separate him from the Vorth. If they could do that, they could target him directly and force the creature to react with pure instinct rather than trained responses. "Stay together," Day said, placing his hand on the Vorth's flank. The creature rumbled its understanding. The third guard activated a neural disruptor, a weapon that sent out waves of painful psychic energy. It was specifically designed to break an animal's concentration, to reduce even trained war beasts to confused, frightened animals. The Vorth roared in pain as the waves hit it. Its body went rigid, muscles spasming. In the royal box, Emperor Vex Thor leaned forward eagerly. This was it. The creature would lose control now. It would either attack the boy or flee in panic. Either way, the human would fail. But then, something remarkable happened. Day stepped in front of the Vorth, placing himself between his friend and the source of pain. The neural disruptor hit him too, and it felt like his brain was being squeezed in a vice. But he didn't move. "I'm here," he said through gritted teeth. "I've got you." The Vorth's eyes focused on Day. The boy was protecting it, taking pain for it. Day, the creature's panic faded. Despite the agony of the neural weapon, the Vorth trusted its partner more than it feared the pain. Day gave another signal, one they'd never practiced, but one he hoped the Vorth would understand through their bond. He pointed at the guard with the neural disruptor and made a sweeping motion. The Vorth lunged forward faster than the guards expected. It covered the distance in 3 powerful bounds and used its armored head to ram the guard's weapon arm. The neural disruptor went flying, crashing against the arena wall and shattering into pieces. The guard stumbled backward, terrified. The Vorth was right in front of him, could kill him with a single bite. But instead, it simply sat down and looked back at Day, waiting for the next instruction. The crowd went wild. Beings from 1,000 worlds were on their feet, cheering for the human boy and his impossible friend. The first guard, who had recovered his shock baton, made one last desperate attempt. He ran straight at Day, trying to incapacitate the boy and break the creature's focus. But Day and the Vorth had spent 28 days learning each other's movements, each other's thoughts. They didn't need commands anymore. The Vorth intercepted the guard mid-charge, using its body weight to knock him down. Then it placed one massive paw on the guard's chest, not crushing, just holding, and looked at Day for confirmation. "Good," Day said. The Vorth immediately released the guard and trotted back to Day's side. All 3 guards were disarmed and defeated. Not one of them was seriously injured. The Vorth had demonstrated perfect control, perfect obedience, and perfect restraint. But more than that, it had shown something else. It had shown partnership, trust, love. The arena fell silent. 500,000 beings waited to see what the Emperor would do. Vex Thor stood slowly in his royal box. His 4 eyes were fixed on Day and the Vorth. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, with obvious reluctance, he spoke. "The human has succeeded." The crowd exploded into cheers so loud that the arena itself seemed to shake. "Helios V's belongs to humanity," the Emperor continued, each word clearly painful for him to say. "As witnessed by the civilizations of the galaxy, I honor my word." Day felt like his legs might give out. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. But he wasn't finished yet. "Emperor Vex Thor," Day called out, his voice amplified by the arena's systems. The crowd went silent again. What was the human doing? "Helios V6 is indeed valuable," Day continued. "But there's something I want more. I want the freedom of every human held in servitude throughout your empire. People like Taeyong, who was taken from Earth as a child and has spent 30 years in slavery." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was unprecedented. "And," Day added, "I want Earth granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all the rights and protections that come with it. Not as subjects, but as equals." Emperor Vex Thor's face darkened with anger. "You dare ask for more than what was agreed?" "I'm not asking for more," Day said calmly. "I'm asking to trade. Helios VIs for the things I just mentioned. 1 planet in exchange for freedom and equality. Tens. The Emperor looked at Bin Su, who quickly consulted his data pad. After a moment, the advisor whispered something to Vex Thor. The Emperor's shoulders sagged slightly. He had been outmaneuvered, and he knew it. The entire galaxy was watching. If he refused this reasonable trade after promising the planet, he would look petty and cruel. "Very well," he said finally. "All humans in Calixian service are hereby freed, and Earth is granted full council membership, effective immediately." The crowd erupted again, but this time, it wasn't just cheering. It was something deeper, respect, maybe even awe. Day felt the Vorth press against his side, and he wrapped his arms around the creature's neck. "We did it, friend. We actually did it." Later, after the crowd had dispersed and the celebrations had begun, Day stood with the Vorth in a quiet corner of the menagerie. Taeyong was there too, tears streaming down his face. "I'm free," Taeyong kept saying. "After 30 years, I'm free. I can go home. We're all free now," Narim said, appearing with Ji-Hei and Hei-1. "Earth is a recognized civilization. We have rights, protection, all because of you, Day." "Not just me," Day said, scratching the Vorth's favorite spot. "We did this together." Hei-1 stepped forward. "I've been authorized to ask you something. The Calixian Science Council wants to know if you'll stay and help us develop new approaches to working with other species. You've proven that there's a better way than force and domination." "What about my friend?" Day asked, gesturing to the Vorth. "Your friend goes wherever you go. That bond you've created is too valuable to break." Day looked at the Vorth, which gazed back at him with those intelligent eyes. "What do you think? Want to help me teach these people how to be better?" The Vorth rumbled its purring sound and pressed its head against Dai's chest. "I think that's a yes," Ji-Hei said with a smile. As they walked out of the menagerie together, the human boy, the Death World predator, and their growing group of friends, Day thought about his grandmother. She would have been proud. She had always told him that the fiercest creature would follow someone who spoke its language. He just had to be patient enough to learn. And in learning that language, he had changed the galaxy.